All right, welcome to the 100th episode of the Two Shots podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be joined by an eclectic group of people. We have an all-star lineup. Let's just be honest here. We have the great James Pledger joining us. We also are going to be joined by RJ Marquez and our good friend here, Jeff Garcia, the host of the Locked On Spurs podcast and the lead Spurs writer for News for San Antonio.
Well,
And we're also going to be joined by our usual suspects, Benjamin Bornstein of Project Spurs, Wesley Perkins, who's a co-host here with us on Two Shots, and the new addition to Two Shots, the one and only Chelsea Torres. So Chelsea, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. How's the weather over in Corpus?
Hot. Sun-
Oh, and Pledger
It's
just
gross,
finished.
like the past month, so it's
Really?
nice that the sun's finally out. Yes.
Yeah, Pledger just finished his workout, so he's letting us, see the guns. He's showing.
show off the results, baby.
There you go. There you go. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive in here and we're going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about I want to start off talking about some Spurs nostalgia because I think Jeff is the one that I saw put it up first. Jeff, you had put a tweet out and your tweet was showing clips. You had a link to the clips from David Robinson's 71-point game. We're on the anniversary, of David Robinson's 71-point game. And the thing, Jeff, and I remember this vividly. I want to see if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, this game was not televised. I think we only
That's
had
correct.
radio only. The only
Right.
Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. It was radio only, and I actually remember listening to it at my grandmother's on her old-timey radio when it happened, and it was such a great night for Spurs fans. And it's a shame that it was not televised, although it is archived. I believe some of the game has been released, but all in all, it was just showing just how great Robinson was, and just how unappreciated it was when he played, even at his peak days. You fast forward to today, and you got a guy like Kevin Durant who also tweeted it as well, just giving his respect to big number 50 on a great day in Spurs history. And salute to the Admiral.
Yeah, and the only video footage that we have are the clips from that game were courtesy of News for San Antonio. They believe they were the only film crew or news crew, should I say, there from San Antonio. So that's the only reason that clips exist of the game.
That was so long ago. That's when they had their station downtown near St. Mary's, I believe, somewhere off there. But yeah, it's been a minute, and I'm glad that younger Spurs fans, can see exactly what we got to see, live and in person, and to see Robinson just do his thing. It was such a great thing to watch every single night. He's such a freak athlete, knocked down that mid-range shot, give him the lane. He took it, finished with power, had his moments with the refs too. Yeah, you're right. Admiral wasn't always an officer and a gentleman at times, but all in all, what can you say? Glad to say that he played in the silver and black for his entire career.
Yeah. What did you all think? Let's start with you, RJ. I mean, what did you think of David Robinson's 71-point performance?
Yeah, so I was gonna jump in, but refresh my memory. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't it between David Robinson and Shaq?
Yeah.
And Shaq had basically dropped like 50 or something in his game, and the Spurs kind of knew what David needed to get in order to win the scoring title. So I thought that was kind of an interesting wrinkle to this. But as you were saying, Jeff, I mean, obviously David Robinson is one of the most well-respected, most well-liked guys in NBA history. But as far as what he did, his accomplishments, not only the fact that he, came out of Navy, he ended up doing, his military service and then went to the Spurs. I don't know how many people realize that he did that and how rare that would be nowadays to do something like that, or even to just be the number one pick out of Navy for one. Not to be one of these like main, college programs. So David Robinson, absolutely one of the greatest. I'm not from San Antonio. I wasn't born and raised here, but, we used to watch Spurs games all the time. I'm from West Texas. So the Spurs were always kind of in our conscience, in our mind and stuff. So definitely one of those guys that I was really glad to see go out with a championship, 2 titles, and, just a beloved guy. I still remember being at the 2014 the NBA Finals Game 5, and David was in the crowd, and one of the loudest cheers in the entire arena was when they put David Robinson like on the screen, and it was an amazing moment because people just love him. He's such a great guy, and I'm happy that he has that scoring title on top of all the other accolades that came along with his career.
No, most.
Well, here's the
definitely.
thing, you know, it's twice in Spurs history now where they had a player vie for the scoring title. Not only was it David versus Shaq, it was Gervin versus Thompson back in the day. So that's twice that in Spurs history where it came down to the final game or games where an icon that wore the silver and black had to ball out to get that scoring title. But you got to wonder if you fast forward today, would Pop let David play all those minutes to get that scoring number, or he'd be, you know what, David, you don't need it. You're fine. You know, sit down. What are records?
We
know, I
like the
think it was
team we have, Jeff.
Yeah, I think it was John Lucas was the coach, I believe. Maybe?
Yeah.
Or who was the coach of that?
I think it was John Lucas.
But it was John Lucas. Yeah. So my God, am I dating myself? But all in all, you know, it was such a great night, and there's only one person that could ever match Robinson's physique, and that's James Pledger. And he's the only man that can just match that physique.
Wow.
I've never been confused with a 7'2" athletic specimen of a man before. So,
So, Pledger, on that note, you know, what do you remember about this 71-point game out of David Robinson?
I mean, I just remember how freakily athletic David Robinson was in his prime. Like, we remember him late in his career, and he still had the guns, and he still looked like he was chiseled out of granite. But like, young David Robinson was like, he is what people think about with today's NBA bigs. In the terms of their bounciness, they're able to switch, they're able to guard multiple positions because they have the foot speed to be able to keep up with smaller guys and defend them. And he was just an incredible athlete in general, much less a basketball player. And I think his skill set probably could have transitioned to today's game. I have no doubt that he could have developed an outside shot and stretched his game. There are a couple of bigs from that era of bigs that I think could have thrived in today, and both of them happen to have played in the state of Texas, with David Robinson and Akeem Olajuwon as really the only bigs from that era that I could see transferring into today's type of NBA, just because of the way that they played. And his 71, while great, I still think is probably one of his second greatest accomplishments. I think that quadruple double was insane, and something I'm not sure we'll see again anytime soon, at least.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Turnovers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we ever count turnovers?
The dubious quadruple double.
Oh man. So let's go ahead and get Chelsea's take here. Chelsea, what do you remember from the 71-point performance? I'm probably.
Okay, well,
Did you see it live, or did you just see the
no,
highlights?
of course not. The fact that you even asked if I saw that live is funny. No, but what I do know, and I'll just say as a fan of course, you know, growing up in San Antonio, being a fan of the Spurs, David Robinson, all of that, I think it's just cool to know that San Antonio has been able to create this legacy for so long, for so many years. And that's kind of what people, I think, that are not from here, not even from Texas, or maybe not even pay attention to the Spurs, kind of look back on, are those kinds of players like David Robinson and the Iceman. And that's so cool to see, because that's how we grew up, you know, and that's kind of what we expected. And then moving on to the big three, and of course to what we have now. But I think as a fan, it's just cool to remember this is where the Spurs came from.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go ahead and go with you, Ben. What do you remember from this 71-point performance?
Well, I was 2, so I remember nothing.
You saw the highlights.
I am a student of YouTube games, so I've been able to piece together clips of that game, which were phenomenal. And for context, I just want to name some of the guys who are on that team, just so you have an idea of what who David Robinson was working with. All right, Willie Anderson, Antoine Carr, Terry Cummings, Lloyd Daniels, Vinny Del Negro, Dale Ellis, Sleepy Floyd, Jack Haley, Chuck Nevitt, J.R. Reed, Dennis Rodman, Chris Whitney. All right? I don't think there are maybe 2 names on that list people recognize. All right? And I think in that game, David Robinson was the only guy to score in double figures. So, I mean, this game was incredible. It was unbelievable. And I will never forget, I actually ended up getting a David Robinson T-shirt, and it had the little NBA draft on the side of it. It actually had the wrong draft. It said the 89 draft, which was the first year he played. He was drafted in 87. And I always like to point that out to people because obviously he took 2 years and he didn't play, and he gave his service to the country. And so, it's like, the NBA screwed up. Look, another one. So that's actually my favorite part of Dave. One of my favorite parts of David Robinson's career outside of what he actually did on the court.
Yeah. What about you, Wes? What's your memory that you have of that 71-point game?
Well, I like how Chelsea inadvertently called us all old for saying this.
I know.
How
rude, Chelsea.
No, kind of like Jeff and Joe, you guys were talking about this, listening to it live. This was an interesting point in my history. I was just a kid, growing up, but I did not have TV for about 10 years of my life. And so even if it had been on TV, I wouldn't have heard it. I listened to everything exclusively on the radio. And so that's where my love of radio and the love of analytics and things that you hear from all the shows and podcasts come from, is just that time frame. And I listened to that game. I remember vividly. I was at a Chevron station, in Hondo, Texas, when that 71st point went in. I can remember that as clear as day. And I just remember being so excited because, all of my time growing up in around the area, there had been talk about the Spurs moving on, and, maybe they were going to stay, maybe they weren't. There's buyers, there's blah, 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 blah. And we'll never fully understand how important David Robinson is to this franchise because of the fact that media wasn't available back then like it is today. In today's world, if David Robinson plays, he's going to be mentioned up there with Anthony Davis. He's going to be mentioned up there with even the greats like LeBron and Kawhi and so on and so forth. He was at a time when there was so much parity in the NBA, pretty much the golden age, where every team had 1 or 2 superstar players. And, that time frame, can you imagine if any of those, kind of to what Pledger was saying a minute ago, can you imagine if any of those players had been able to have the kind of exposure that we have nowadays? That 71-point game is something that, again, I'll never forget it, but, it had bigger ramifications because, again, David saved and helped to save this franchise and kept it afloat, with those kind of performances and that kind of excitement that he generated.
Yeah. So with that said, we just like to
don't
say,
discount TC.
Yeah.
TC was a bad man in San Antonio. He was a bad man. You kids do not remember how much of enforcer, let's put it that way, TC was. He'd come out black and bruised, bloody-eyed. A lot of the players back in the day called TC old man strength. He was just a rock. And
you're talking
Spurs
about Terry Cummings.
The Spurs were, at that time, so desperate to light a fire under David. I think that's the best way to say it. That's why they brought in a guy like Rodman and TC. Yeah, they had traded away some of their better players to get TC out of Milwaukee.
I see you disrespecting Jack Haley's name there, Jeff.
Hey, he was the babysitter. Let's all be honest. He was
Rodman,
the babysitter of Rodman. Yeah. But no, TC was a bad man, Ben. It's a shame you never get to see him play.
I only got to see him as old man Terry Cummings.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the Spurs had TC in his right around his peak. I think he was still, a legit player. He was just a bad man. And
he could play the keyboard too.
The Spurs got Terry Cummings the same way they got Michael Finley on the backside of their careers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The latter part of the career.
Antoine Carr, guys, the big dog. He was the guy that was much.
Oh, the big dog.
Well.
Yeah.
The big dog, man. That was one of my favorites.
Don't forget Frank Burkowski, man. He could throw down with the best of them, man.
I was there at the Hemisphere Arena. Oh my God, I'm old. When Frank Burkowski and John Sally got in a brawl.
Oh yeah.
And there's an infamous photo how it ended with John Sally choking out Frank Burkowski as they're flying out of bounds.
That was when you could still do that kind of stuff in the NBA. Nowadays,
yeah, that was just a foul. Yeah. Nowadays, you get tossed.
Oh,
out.
you choked a guy out. That's come.
It was but a flesh wound.
That's a common thought.
Yeah, you can't be doing that stuff nowadays. But let's go ahead and kind of move on here and let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. And tonight they have a critical matchup. They have a game against the New Orleans Pelicans. And really, if the Spurs win, they can go ahead and basically eliminate the Pelicans from playoff contention. They could actually clinch their 10th spot in the West, which, they still have to win a couple games in order to get into the playoffs. But, it is what it is at this point. Any little win helps the San Antonio Spurs. So we're going to go ahead and start with you, Pledger, because I love how Pledger just can stir the pot. And I'm trying to spin it as a positive thing, but I know Pledger's just going to go over here and just
stir the pot. You're kidding me.
He's going to throw a bomb right now. So I want to hear what.
Let me tell you this: every time Pledger comes on Locked On Spurs, this is his text to me. I can't wait.
Straight Joker laugh.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought my jokes were bad.
Oh my God. So James, just go ahead and lay us on you, man. What do you think tonight? You think the Spurs are going to be able to eliminate the Pelicans from playoff contention, or are they going to go ahead and just keep things interesting?
I don't know about eliminate. I expect this. The toughest thing about this is just the fact that they don't have any way to match up against Zion. Like, Zion is a point forward in the way that Magic Johnson was. He controls the pace. He brings the ball up the floor. He initiates the offense. And they get switches on high screen and rolls with them, and he just takes advantage. And I don't know how you stop him unless you go the old Kobe Bryant route of, we're going to let you get yours, but nothing else for anyone else. And I'm wondering if that's the philosophy that Pop uses tonight to at least try and slow the Pelicans down, or, keep other people from getting hot, which would eviscerate them. But I mean, it's the Spurs. They're on the road, so there's a chance they can knock them out. But at the same time, it's still a 500 team. And from one game to the next, we're not sure exactly what to expect out of them, because they could come out and this team, in a way, and I'm shocked that we haven't heard it from Pop this year, because it's usually one of his go-to moves, especially earlier in the season, is to call his team soft, right?
Yeah.
As a way to kind of stir the pot and get them to focus in. But this season, we haven't heard that from him this year. But this may be one of the softest teams I think he's had in recent memory, because if one thing is not going right for the Spurs, the whole thing seems to kind of unravel. Like, this feels like a finely tuned machine. When everything's working, they look fantastic and they can play with anyone. If Jakob gets into foul trouble, the whole thing seems to unravel. If the threes aren't falling, the whole thing seems to unravel. If the Heat go into a zone and they can't hit shots in the mid-range or get people open looks, the whole thing seems to unravel. So this team is legitimately, they need everything to be right. And when everything's right, they look really, really good. When one thing's wrong, this team can lose to anybody as well.
Yeah. So Chelsea, let's go ahead and pitch to you real quick. Spurs tonight, how are you feeling? You think they're going to wind up beating the Pelicans and, clinching that 10th spot? And at this point, do you really even care? Because like James said, they're a 500 ball club, so I don't know if I trust them going on the road to try to, get a win and play in, and get that 8th spot, because they'd have to win twice on the road. I mean, how are you feeling?
Okay, so I do care, Joe. But I have to say, statistically looking at both teams, it's almost evenly matched up for tonight, right? But I feel like James is right, going against someone like Zion, and then of course you have Steven Adams, you have Lonzo Ball, and if Lonzo is playing, I'm not sure. And even then, with who we have playing tonight, is everybody healthy? I think it's obviously a must-win moving forward, but I just don't know if the Spurs necessarily have that star power to win against a team like the Pelicans. Then again, the Pelicans haven't necessarily been winning some must-wins that they should have been, right? They did have just a huge game against Magic. Then again, Spurs just had a big game against Pistons. So I honestly almost see it going either way because I don't think both teams are necessarily playing to their full potential. But I would obviously like the Spurs to win. And I think they have a good chance given everything is in place the way that it should.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get your take on this thing. RJ, how are you feeling? What does your gut tell you? We're going to go ahead and clinch that 10th spot, or are we going to keep things interesting?
Yeah, gut does not feel good about this right now. And I think it's because you brought up a good point. I mean, basically that I think if the Spurs win this game, then they would have probably enough space between them and New Orleans to really, I mean, they would have to blow it completely in order to fall out of this whole play-in round. I just think that the Pelicans have to play as the more desperate team. And I think right now that we're looking at the Spurs, these are must wins. I think we all know that, but New Orleans is really kind of in a desperate sort of situation right now. And the other thing, and James brought this up earlier, is that I just don't know what the Spurs identity is. And, as we were talking about, as James mentioned, that, it seems like when they hit a wall, I mean, they really hit that wall. That Miami Heat game, they were playing well in the first half. I don't really think about the Pistons game because that was a weird game. Everyone was kind of sitting. Detroit's not very good. But when they played Miami, playing well first half and first three quarters hanging in there with the Heat, and then they just kind of fell apart. And it wasn't even the fact that they weren't competing. It's just that they really didn't know what to do when Miami sort of threw that zone at them. So I think about the identity of this team, and they've been good on the road, which has been surprisingly, I mean, just shockingly bad at home. And I'm trying to figure this out. And that's what I'm saying. They kind of keep me sort of on edge because while I wouldn't expect them to win a game like tonight's game, because I think New Orleans is more desperate at this point, I guess I wouldn't be completely surprised if they did win this game. I don't know. It's a very strange season and a very strange Spurs team, to say the least.
Yeah.
You want to know their identity? They are a slashing mid-range team. That's it.
Yeah, and I feel like, okay, and that is the identity, but then you have Derek White trying to shoot. They want him to be a volume 3-point shooter, and they know that they need that part of the game in order to compete with these other teams that are shooting threes.
That's the problem.
They definitely don't, and they're trying to force it. Yeah, they're trying to force it.
Yeah, and then we're not.
You just
very good.
to listen to what LaMarcus Aldridge said when he left the game. In his statement, he said, "Thank you, Nets, for letting me be me," versus the Spurs trying to turn him into a 3-point shooter. So that sums up how desperate the Spurs are, looking for anybody to knock down the outside shot.
Yeah,
the Spurs are awful for trying to make you fit into a game and prolong your career.
There you go. Hey, Ben. So, Ben, give us your take, man. How you feeling? You feel good about this game tonight, or you think that the Pelicans are just going to absolutely blast the San Antonio Spurs?
For what it's worth, I haven't felt great about a Spurs game in a long time.
True that.
Although that's not entirely true, because I always feel great when they play Orlando. Having grown up in Orlando, I know very much that team will give away games when possible. So that is what I feel good about. But they're a low volume 3-point shooting team. They're not a great 3-point shooting team, and that's scary to me. But I think you can also make the Pelicans that, and you can make this a bit of a slugfest. And I think it's like James mentioned, Zion is your X factor. I think you have one of two options with him. You either kind of let him go off and take shots away from other people, or you say, we're going to pack the paint and we're going to dare to shoot from outside. Good luck. See what happens. I think those are kind of your two options. And, if you execute them well, then great. You probably win the game. But you have to find ways to keep Zion either limited or everyone else not participating on offense.
Yeah. So, Wes, go ahead and give us your take, man. You think they're going to win tonight, or the Pelicans are going to be victorious?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm disappointed in James because he's wrong. They do something very, very well. they give up 3-pointers all the time, opponents 3-pointers. So their idea is they definitely give up 3-pointers. Let's be honest. So I do think that they're going to win tonight because I think, it's on the road. If it's at home, they lose. Let's be honest. For whatever weird reason that is, I think that's a thing. They play even good against the very strong teams outside of Philly and some of the teams out there on the East Coast that blasted them a little bit. But I do think that this is going to be one of those situations where you're going to get a better effort out of this team. I think that, I know it's in the discussion points. I'm not going to get too far into it, but the rotations are baffling at times, in particular when, some of the things start dominoing and you're playing your older legs that don't look like they have much juice in them. And you got younger legs over there. And, I don't know. I think that they are probably not headed towards the playoffs this year. And that's another discussion point later. But, I'm not going to be disappointed if they clinch the 10th seed. They have a play-in opportunity. That would be awesome. But give me the lottery. Give me one of the great bigs that's in this coming lottery, and you'll have a happy Spurs fan right here.
Why? So he can't play for 3 years?
Yeah, pretty much.
Everybody wants all this young talent, but we know from experience that even if we get it, they're not going to see the floor anytime soon.
Yeah, they're going to be delegated to the G League, and it is what it is on that end. The Spurs like sending, their players over there to kind of develop, and they bring them in slowly, regardless of what Spurs fans feel about them. Spurs fans have been clamoring, to go ahead and get Devin Vassell more minutes, Luka Samanic more minutes. I believe you call him Luka Samanic now, right? Pledger, or is he still Sandwich?
I mean, he's like a sandwich. I mean, he's a step up.
Yeah. Jeff, what does your gut tell you, man? Are you thinking that the Spurs are going to win tonight, or are they going to keep things interesting and let the Pelicans just go ahead and blast them?
Well, let's take a look at some numbers and historically what the Spurs have been doing this year versus the Pelicans. Each game has only been decided by 3 points this year. 95-98 Spurs, and then you got 117-114. So that tells you exactly how competitive these two teams are. Now, you mentioned Zion. They threw Keldon Johnson at him earlier this season. Remember when Keldon went through murderer's row trying to defend? It was like it was Zion and then LeBron, and it was just one after another. So what has Keldon done in that sense? Well, Zion is averaging 20.5 points per game, 12.5 boards, 2.5 assists, and 2.5 steals versus San Antonio. Gets better, guys. Lonzo Ball averages 16 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and then BI is just wrecking them with 28.5 points. So I actually think BI is going to be, Brandon Ingram is going to be the handful for San Antonio. I think he's the one that they really got to key on. But all in all, I'm expecting another competitive game. So far this season, that's what these two teams have given us, an exciting game. You just hope the Spurs can just not let off that gas pedal, because we see it time and time again. This is such a tale of two halves, literally. The first half of the season, how many times were we applauding this team for never giving up, always rallying in that fourth quarter? Case in point, the Lakers, the Clippers in their gym. We saw it time and time again. And then as the season progressed, now, they're the Spurs now. They're that 500 team.
To be fair, Devin Vassell was averaging over 15 minutes a game during the first half of the season, so he didn't get a whole bunch of DNP CDs.
Yeah. Now,
there's a lot more to be excited about early.
So you're looking at these two teams, and I think New Orleans kind of is just, they see the writing on the wall. Are they tanking? Yeah, they probably are. The Spurs, I know a lot of people say, we don't know what the Spurs are doing this year. Why are they doing this and that? Well, the players, not the coaches, but the players have come out and said that they're gunning for the postseason, that they want the playoffs. DeMar DeRozan has said it. Rudy Gay has said it. Derek White has said it. So we know what they're going for. So with that in mind, they're going to go for this win. They're going to try to solidify a place in the play-in tournament. And are we at that point now in Spurs history where we're cheering for the play-in tournament? How far have we dropped? But all in all, I'm expecting just another competitive game. So go Spurs, go. Hopefully get the W.
Yeah, I hope we get the dub tonight. That would make me feel a little bit better. But I still don't have confidence in this team being able to win 2 games to get that 8th spot.
Here's the thing. The leading scorer versus the Pelicans this year is not DeMar, it's not Keldon. It's Rudy Gay. In 2 games, he's averaging 22 points versus the Pels. So Go, Rudy, go.
I'd like to change my vote that we're going to lose then if Rudy Gay has been the scoring leader.
Oh my.
Okay.
You're gonna have a vote of no confidence. There you go, Wesley.
Yeah, I was gonna say there goes Devin Vassell's minutes right there.
Yep,
If
there
Rudy
you go.
Gay is playing.
You know why Devin Vassell's not gonna play? Because we like the team we have. No, just playing. That's the consensus on Spurs Twitter, man. It gets me every time. It makes me laugh.
See, as much as I like to needle people, Pop does a better job of needling me with comments like that.
We like the team we have. I need that on a shirt, by the way. I think we need to make one for Pledger.
Get some, or what is it like? Get some nasty, and then we like the team we
We
have.
like the team we have. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and switch topics here. We're gonna go ahead and talk about.
We're just playing other guys right now.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about Spurs fans, and they've been kind of turning on Coach Pop. A lot of Spurs fans, many are questioning his lineups. They're questioning his coaching. They're even calling for Coach Pop to be fired. And this happens just about after every loss. You look at Spurs Twitter and
even every win.
and every win,
Yes.
you know, you have the fans that are just not happy regardless. You know, you go on Facebook, subreddits, whatever you want to do, and you see fans just saying, you know, I think it's time for Coach Pop to leave and they want him fired. You know, they want Coach Becky to take over. And it's, you know, I don't understand a lot of times, you know, why the fans are at this juncture. I think it has to do a lot with the record and us not winning, you know, that kind of would make things happen like this where people will turn on you. But I think at this juncture, we should just enjoy what we have right now in Coach Pop, because when he's gone, who knows if this team is going to get worse? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just saying, you know what? We know he's going to retire sooner or later. Just enjoy the time that you got with him on the court. That's all I'm saying, you know? So let's go ahead and pitch to Jeff. Jeff, I know you've been one to see this many a times after a
Yes,
Spurs
I have.
loss. What do you got to say about the Spurs fans wanting Coach Pop gone?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because you see Pop. I mean, look, I've been around since day one of Popovich taking over the reins as head coach. And to me, this is not surprising because for the 20 years he's been doing this, you know, I've seen this time and time again, over and over again. Tony Parker, Speedy Claxton, Manu Ginobili, Michael Finley, Lonnie Walker recently. And you're seeing it right now happening with Drew Eubanks. The list goes on and on and on. George Hill too, you know, another guy that was relegated to the G League or stapled to the bench. You know, this is not really anything new. These kids nowadays are you know, they're becoming more aware. You know, they're getting more experience in analyzing the game, and they're seeing it, and that's where you're seeing a lot of them being very vocal now. But for us old guys, you know, this has just been Pop. This has been Pop. You know, I've said this on Locked On Spurs. I've said this with James on his show, Saturday Morning Hangover. People always say, look at Pop's coaching tree. Look at that. You got Budenholzer. You got Snyder. You know, Will Hardy's getting attention. Becky, left and right. But you ever asked, where did Pop come from? What about his tree? Who is his root? Who are his roots?
Nelly?
Larry Brown, and Nelly. Those have been the biggest influences on Pop. And both of those guys pretty much taught Pop, you never go with young guys. You don't. You go with the horses that got you here. And I don't care if they're ready for the glue farm. You go with them. That's what has been really ingrained in Pop since he began his coaching career. So none of this is anything new for me. But there's got to be a time, either A, he retires and then the whole thing just changes, or B, you see little things. If he does stay on another year, then he's going to have to realize that old way is not working. And you're seeing with the numbers with Vassell. You're seeing Eubanks now. And James brought up a good point on Locked On Spurs today. Eubanks went through the process, and now here he is. Now, granted, there are circumstances involved. Dang is just banged up. They really don't have big man depth, but you're seeing that development process kind of shine now with Eubanks. You see a cat come across James Pledger's screen. But all in all, yeah, the kids just got to realize this has been Pop. I mean, yesterday on the Blitz, I was talking with Rob Thompson and Pledger about this. This is just Pop. Why is everybody surprised and acting like he's doing something so new of not playing the young guys? This has been his thing. Now, as far as, little signs of change, I think the most recent sign of change was him announcing to the world that, they were going to just go with the young kids last year, and they were in the bubble. That was huge for him. When was the last time you ever heard Pop say, we're throwing out the scouting report and we're not going for the playoffs? That's far and few between. I don't think I've ever heard him say that. So here we are now, and it looks like he's reverting back to his old coaching ways. And that's where you're seeing Vassell stapled to the bench. You're seeing Luka pretty much gone. I mean, case in point, remember when Luka played really well at the Austin G League? Popovich went as far as to announce to the world that Luka's going to get minutes. Now, what happened? Went back to the bench because he trusts his veterans. And that's just what it is. And these kids got to understand that.
Yeah, hey, we're joined by Rudy Campos Jr. here from the Sports Dime. He's one half of the Sports Dime. He wanted to pop in real quick and say something. What's up, Rudy?
Actually, can y'all hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you, man.
Okay, make sure. Hey, I'm just taking a minute. I don't mean to bother the All-Star cast here at all. But, because you've got Chelsea, James, Jeff Garcia, the Boomstein, Wesley, and, of course, the man of the hour, Joe. Hey, Joe, congrats on the first 100 episodes of Two Shots. This is to the next 100 and many, many more. I know you couldn't survive without my personality in the beginning, so I'm going to take credit for the first few episodes. But this is to many, many more, man. I'm wishing you the best. Congratulations. I got to get back to family business. I just wanted to hop on and give you a congrats, buddy.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that, my friend. Hey, make sure you all listen to the Sports Dime on Sundays. Where can they hear you guys?
Yeah, it's on Facebook, Twitter. We go live like about 9:55 or so. It's 10 to 11 every Sunday. But not only that, this Thursday we've got the draft coverage that you're actually helping us out with.
Yep.
Chelsea will be a part of it. So NFL draft coverage this Thursday. But again, hey man, congrats on the 100th episode. I'm sure I'll be involved in the next 100 somehow. But again, congrats, buddy. I wish all of y'all the best of luck.
All right, man. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Later, guys.
Laters. All right. So we were blessed with the gorgeous face of one ravishing Rudy Campos. So we're talking about Coach Pop and how Spurs fans have been really nasty with him and calling for him to retire. And I want to hear from one James Pledger because I just love to hear his take. So James, lay it on us. What are you going to tell us about Coach Pop and these fans?
Well, apparently Spurs fans have very short memory because even 2 and 3 championships in, if they go on a 3-game losing streak, we've received calls about fire Pop and the games past Pop by. I mean, this isn't new. It's just they're losing more now, so it's more vocal than it's been. Like he going a 3-game losing streak, we get those, and they rattle off like 8 straight, and everybody be quiet for a little bit. So this isn't new, but you have to wonder how long, and you're going to stick with this if you're the Spurs as long as he wants to continue coaching. Like that's not a doubt in my mind. But the longer you stick with this, the further you push everything down the road in terms of the rebuild. Because let's face it, that's what this is at this point. You don't have veterans. There isn't that free agent on the market that's going to completely revolutionize and lead this roster. So you have to look at this in terms of the long term now. And the long term is going to be built through either the draft or free agency, but outside of ancillary pieces to help, like floor spacers like Lauri Markkanen or an athletic big like John Collins, I don't see the other players in free agency that add that much to help take this team to the next level. So you're either taking a draft pick this year, next year, whatever it is, hoping that he turns into the next guy. But even then, even if he turns into the next guy, if Pop continues to coach this team, when is that timetable? Because Pop has shown you his timetable time in and time out throughout his entire career. And we've seen, especially with Devin Vassell this year, despite the fact that he's quote unquote earned the minutes, as you see almost every plus minus box score at the end of games, he's usually a net plus and a big net plus at that when he actually gets minutes. But he's decided to leave him as DMPCDs for a lot of the time, or as in the Indiana game, just empty the bench, and he's one of those last few guys in, whether you're up 15 or down 15 at the end of the last couple of minutes of a ball game. Unless multiple people miss games like this previous game, you're just not going to see him very much this year. Pop has set his lineup, I think, and we know what his rotation is, and I don't think he's going to alter that here down the stretch unless something catastrophic happens, unless there's either an injury or they just completely fall out of it. But you wonder what this does in the development of these young players as well. Like, okay, we're this far off. And as we've seen, Lonnie's finally taken on a bigger role. So is Drew Eubanks. Surprise, surprise, they're both 3 years kind of into this Pop process. The only person that has kind of bucked the trend of that is Keldon Johnson, and getting minutes before his third year and consistently. And you would hope that he's able to flex and grow, but he's shown you time in and time out that he won't. So what will you do at that point in terms of seeing where this thing goes? And to me, where this thing goes is this is a middling team until either the next head coach comes in or the next superstar comes in.
I'm glad you brought up about the development things. Just to give you an idea how much these kids coming out of college are aware. If you get drafted by the Spurs, that is your process. For the Keldon and the Samanic draft, I was there for that. So you got a bunch of kids that were drafted ahead of them, and they were saying, "Oh, can't wait to play for the Chicago Bulls. I can't wait to play for the Knicks. I can't wait to play for the Pistons. You know, it's gonna be great to put on that uniform." When I spoke to Samanic and Keldon Johnson off to the side, right when they got their draft day cap, this is what they told me. Yeah, I can't wait for that process. I know that process is going to be so good. I'm fully aware of it. That's how much these kids are now more sophisticated as far as knowing what you're really getting into in San Antonio. And you got to wonder if that trend needs to stop happening as this franchise moves forward in this next chapter.
Yeah. So RJ,
you also wonder if that process, because they obviously target guys that know the process and are okay with that process, which is why maybe they didn't take a Tyrese Halliburton when he was available, despite what you see what he's doing in Sacramento right now. You wonder how much that limits the way they draft, because they only want to bring in people that they know are going to be okay with the way that they do things and bringing along the young guys.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and pitch to you, RJ. You heard what, both Jeff and Pledger had to say. What do you think about all these fans bad-mouthing Coach Pop and wanting him gone?
Well, I will say that it's interesting because after all those years of success and championships, I'm glad to see that the fans are not apathetic, and they really wear their emotions on their sleeve, and they're very outspoken as well.
They're passionate. They're passionate.
They are very passionate, to say the least. Yes, after every win, after every loss, it's always an adventure on Twitter just to get a feel of what the fans are saying and just to kind of see the back and forth. So I can appreciate that. That all being said, like we've been saying, I think that the bottom line right now is that this is a 500 team, and that's why I'm very interested to see what happens this summer. Obviously, Coach Pop's going to be coaching the Olympic team, but it's not only that. I think we're going to get an indication, really, of what this team will look like for the next few years. Whether if DeMar sticks around, if he decides to resign, or if the Spurs can bring in a guy who's going to get them at least into maybe the top 4 in the West. As in John Collins, Lauri Markkanen, those names, of course, are being mentioned. So I think that's going to be a big indication as to where we go in the next few years. Because look, I think Pop, I want to believe that he will be smart enough to basically say, like, hey, I'm good. I'm going to leave this team in a good standing. But I don't want to get it to the point where they're a 20-win team again. And then they're just like, well, we need to get rid of him, because we know he is not, or the Spurs organization is not going to force him out. It's going to be totally his call. So I think this summer is going to really be a big indication as to where we are. And look, I hate to bring this up, but I think they had this plan fully in place when Kawhi Leonard was there, and Kawhi blew the whole thing up. I mean, Kawhi would have been
Yeah.
sort of that perfect bridge to let Pop go about his way. And so Kawhi blew that up. I think Pop felt like he had to sort of rebuild this thing on the fly, and maybe he doesn't want to leave it as a middling team right now. So this will be a very interesting summer.
Yeah. So
RJ, do you think that Pop is biding his time to get through the Olympics and finish that kind of run because he knew that the Olympics were kind of what he was gearing for? Or do you think that he's reinvigorated by coaching these younger guys and wants to continue on past the Olympics even more?
Yeah, so there's times when I honestly say to myself, I was like, what is he doing? Like, because especially in those nights when they're just getting blown out and you could tell like they're just not in games, I was like, there's no way he can be enjoying this at all. But yeah, early on this season, I was like, well, maybe he really does like sort of teaching the game and just being around the game. I do think that the Olympics has been a big milestone for him. And I would say he'd be a lot closer to saying to himself, I'm ready to go after the Olympics. So yeah, I definitely think that that's definitely been kind of a key moment for him in his coaching career.
okay. So let's go ahead and go with you. Let's go ahead and pitch to Chelsea here. Chelsea, what do you have to say to the fans that have been really mean to Coach Pop and wanting him gone?
Well, I'm not surprised because I feel like even growing up as a Spurs fan in San Antonio, you have those Spurs fans that were saying, we need to fire Coach Pop. I mean, this has been happening for my past 30 years of life. But, you know, we talk about the development, and I was thinking that's what's so different about the Spurs organization compared to a lot of other organizations in the NBA is that they focus on building up from the G League, moving on to the big leagues, you know, the NBA. And I don't think a lot of other organizations are at that same strategy level that the Spurs are. Right. And so I feel as if Spurs fans see these other big teams with the Monstars and the big time name coach, and they want to be just like that. But I mean, it's obvious the Spurs are not there. Yes, we have a veteran coach. We have Coach Popovich. I mean, everyone knows him. But is he necessarily coaching a team right now that's going to win? No, not this year. Probably not next year. I don't know if he's necessarily biding his time for Olympics. I think he's fully aware of where the Spurs are at right now. He knows. He knows what's going on. He has a plan in his mind. He just doesn't tell anybody. He just doesn't. Maybe the coaches, maybe Becky and them, they kind of know, okay, given a couple years, he'll eventually move out. Hopefully by then they'll have more guys, these younger guys, they'll have been there for a little bit longer. Hopefully they'll get a superstar or somebody that can bring that level of where we used to remember the Spurs with the big three. But it's not going to be now, and it's not going to be next year. I think Coach Pop is kind of just hanging on, trying to build that team. I don't think it's necessarily time for him to retire or be fired, which I don't think will happen anyway. But I think it's going to be a couple years before we see Pop actually leave, and it'll definitely be on its own terms.
Yeah. So let's go.
Brian Wright is on the clock this summer. I truly believe that he is on the clock. He has how much money to play with? Going to have a decent draft pick, you know, maybe not top 10, but maybe just right outside of the top 10. And if all the veterans do leave and not resign Patty, Rudy, DeMar, et cetera, then this team just gotten a lot younger because they're going to add a young kid out of the draft. The G League will be back probably in some form. That kid is probably going to be stuck there. Spurs fans are going to just do the whole thing all over again. So what you're seeing right now this year is going to repeat itself next year. Why isn't the player that we got? He's a number 13 pick in the draft. Why is he in Austin? Gets recalled. Everybody's going to go crazy. Oh, look, they recalled him. Then he's stapled to the bench. Here's what you're going to see. Why is he on the bench? Why is he on the bench? He gets resent back to Austin. Why is he over there again? Basically, you're going to see almost a carbon copy of this season next year if the Spurs, Brian Wright, don't swing for the fences. And yes, I do say flip some of these kids if they have a chance to bring in a potential top 10 player in next season.
But here's the thing, too. Because of the money that they're going to have in free agency, we all know what better way to use it than to spend it on veterans, because at least we'll get to see them play. With the young guys, we're not going to see them. And we know that as long as Greg Popovich is in some way, shape, or form in charge of this team, the process is in place for how they develop players. And that process isn't going to change. And I would like to see it change, just because I believe that, when certain rookies, and I will use Devin Vassell in this ilk, Kawhi Leonard was of this ilk, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker were of this ilk. When they show you that they belong, they should earn their minutes at that point. And that's whether there's a veteran in front of him or not. At some point, much like you did with Steven Jackson, you have to go, look, your spot in the rotation's done. This dude's outplaying you. And Pop seems to have this attachment to his veterans to where he doesn't want to do that right now with young guys. And I don't understand why, because outside of Patty, the veterans on this team aren't the veterans that date back to the glory years. So they're just veterans because they're veterans at this point, whether it's Rudy Gay or LaMarcus Aldridge when he was here, or whoever. They seem to be impeding the growth instead of helping to expedite the growth of the young guys right now. What do y'all think?
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and get a reaction here from you, Ben. What do you think? We can't hear you, Ben. We lost you, Ben. We don't have no audio from you, my friend. We'll go ahead and get you, Wesley. Go ahead and let's get your take.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a couple of things here from everybody that I really agree with. First of all, you're a victim of your own circumstance and of your own success. And the Spurs franchise has been so successful for so many years that Spurs fans get to be very fickle about the team. And I also think part of that becomes the fact that San Antonio only has one major sports franchise. And because of that, the impatience is even bigger, because of the situation. So, much like, what Jeff and RJ and Pledger and Chelsea have all said, becomes a time when it's natural to really want to be in something different. My hesitation to that, and you have to take a broader spectrum to that and a bigger patience to that, is what out there is better? What coach out there would you get right now who's better than Popovich? There might be a few young names, splashy names, and quite frankly, you might say guys that came from his tree, hey, come back and coach for the Spurs. Hey, Becky's a great person. She's ready to take over. But the fact of the matter is Greg Popovich is one of the top 2 or 3 coaches of all time. And, winners to steal something from Mike Taylor, winners get to do what they want. I think that when you've done what he's done, it's easy for us to want to play armchair quarterback as fans and armchair GM as fans. But the fact of the matter is that, barring anything else, other franchises have gone through significant losing periods. Even the vaunted Lakers, even the Celtics, who went through, they went through a hellacious period of time after their big three aged too far and they took them on for too long. The Lakers, even in the Kobe Bryant era, had some really terrible, tough times in there in between. And so what we saw was unprecedented. I think Spurs fans don't always want to remember that. 22 years of straight playoff appearances, 20 years of 50 wins. That will not be matched again for a long time because of it's a super team creation status that happens and people wanting to blow things up so quickly. And I think that also is why the third reason why you see the Spurs fans get really upset is that you see how free agents tend to want to flock to one place or to another place and create the super team environment. But much like we talked about in the first segment of this, there's not but just a handful of true upper elite superstars in this league right now. And so what you really have to ask yourself is, when you're spending your money, do you want to go after something that seems pretty splashy at the time? Or do you want to go after something that maybe has a chance to develop to be something bigger? That's where most Spurs fans don't want to be. Me, personally, as a Spurs fan, as a guy who's not a part of the media, as a band director who loves to talk sports, what I can tell you is I'm on both sides of that fence. Do I want to see them win? Of course. But I also understand the fact that you can't do things to your franchise that would damage it for the upcoming decades to come. And even with this coming summer, to Jeff's point, they've got 50 mil. If they, of all those players decide that they're going to, not re-sign and whatnot, they have 50 mil to spend, but on whom? The question becomes Vucevic, when he left and he became, Chicago's prized possession. He was a guy that really probably could have turned your franchise in a different direction, but there's not a franchise cornerstone player in this upcoming free agent period. So your best option is you keep these young guys going, you add somebody going forward. Pop, you hope that his mindset would change, but he's set in his ways. He is who he is at this point. Nobody's going to change that. And the fact of the matter is, yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I think we have to appreciate what he's done. I think we have to hope and pray for the continuance of this young team to gel together, and that they want to stay in place and not go jump ship when they become great. And I think that you just, this is kind of a spurt that we're not used to. We have to just weather it and continue to trust that the people around are going to do the right things.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, you got to keep in mind, moving forward with this franchise, you're seeing what the NBA is now, the super team. We're going to go to Brooklyn, New York. We're going to go to Los Angeles. Possibly New York could be the next destination now with the way they're playing and the amount of money they have. Where does San Antonio fit in all that? Can they draw a star free agent? The last one was LaMarcus Aldridge. It's been a minute since the Spurs have had that. The only one. Thank you. So you got to factor in city, because these players nowadays look at that now. What is it about now? Their brand. Pop didn't have to deal with that with the big three. Manu wasn't about that. Maybe Tony was, but TD definitely wasn't. And they brought in a bunch of veterans that were already past that moment in their youth. Now these young guys are. Look at Lonnie. How many times do you see him debut another T-shirt with his name and his face splashed everywhere? Keldon probably, the same thing too. He's out there in the bound community, getting his name out there.
Yeah.
Murray's New Balance kit. Can you get that type of exposure in San Antonio, or you get it in LA? Do you get it in New York? Then there's this. What is the player personnel going to attract? Can you say, if let's just say there's big free agent A, just making this up, Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is going to be a free agent this summer. Does he want to go play with Derek White and Keldon Johnson versus, let's see here, James Harden and, I'm making this up, Russell Westbrook, that are teaming up in Brooklyn, New York? You got to factor that in too. So there's going to be some lean years ahead for this franchise. I really believe that.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see see that going on right now, and that's why a lot of Spurs fans are calling for Coach Pop. What do you got to say about that, Ben?
It's okay. First of all, a lot of that was taken out of context. We just grabbed players and we didn't take into account salary cap, context, whatever. Point is, Spurs fans need to relax, okay? You're not the Knicks. You're not the Kings. You're not the Clippers. Even in their good Lob City days, they never made a conference final, okay? The Houston Rockets just had the longest streak in the NBA, which was 8 seasons, by the way. They just had that broken because the Spurs knocked them out. All right. So Spurs fans have to understand, and they have to understand history. They have to understand context. Yeah, Brian Wright has a lot of decisions to make this offseason. Like we've been saying, there's a ton of money to throw at people. And like Wesley mentioned, this free agency class now kind of sucks, to be honest. Right?
Yeah,
there are a lot of guys who were taken off the board because they signed extensions. There were going to be a lot better free agents available this summer. They're not there. So what do you think the Spurs are going to do? They're going to throw a little bit of money at some veteran guys for a year and say, hopefully you have them keep their flexibility in the next summer when there's going to be better free agents available, and you try to attract someone to San Antonio. And the craziest part to me is that you have all these players who are supposedly so very money savvy and brand savvy going to live in places like San Francisco, New York, where not only are the taxes insanely high to live, but your salary, what you make on your salary is heavily taxed there as well. You don't have those same restrictions in Texas, all of Texas. And, of course, that means Houston and Dallas can make similar offers in that regard. They don't have the salary cap to do that this offseason, but it's amazing to me how few players consider that when they are making these decisions. But The Spurs have to do well in the draft. They can't screw it up. They don't get to say, well, you know what? We got to pick in the 20s. It probably doesn't really matter who we take because we're going to throw them in the G League for 3 years. At some point, you're going to have to pick a guy in the lottery who is going to be able to either play immediately or after 1 year. Now, I think the front office and Coach Pop have to realize that as well. But the fans also have to go back and look at 20-plus years of history saying the way the Spurs have done it has been pretty successful. They're not a sad sack franchise like the Knicks have been for a long time. Do you know how many Knicks fans are ecstatic right now that they're even just going to make the playoffs? The Spurs fans would never act like that. Granted, they're not the same as New York City people, so it's, that's going to be totally different too. But, there are expectations that Spurs fans have, and that's great. That's what you want to see out of a fan base because it means they care. You don't get that out of Knicks fans and Clippers fans and Kings fans. I mean, if I'm a Kings fan at this point, I am completely apathetic. I don't know if I even have an NBA team, since they got jobbed in 2002, things have never been the same. So, I just think a lot of Spurs fans have to take things you have to take some things with a grain of salt, and some things you have to consider your historical context within the NBA community. I mean, this is a team that wasn't one of the original teams in the NBA, and they still have they're still a top 2 or 3 franchise when it comes to total wins. And they've only been in the league since 76?
Yep.
I mean, they're clearly doing something right.
Hey, Ben, let me say this to you too. And this is Jeff also. I think that what's hurt the Spurs psyche, especially with in terms of free agents, something you just hit on, Ben, a minute ago, is the fact that here's Kawhi Leonard for all the things. Yeah, he was angry. Yeah, he was hiding from the world and all this stuff. But the guy had the potential of a supermax deal. And instead of not just leaving, he went, they traded him to Canada, who has the worst, situation in terms of tax. And then he went to California, who also has the worst tax situation. So to your point, it's almost like the athletes, they could make 220 mil and keep a vast majority of it, and they'd rather not do it. And so that really does hurt a place like San Antonio, where that normally would be a big draw, but right now it doesn't seem to be something that they all really care about too much.
You have to remember too that part of the reason they're choosing those places is because they can make up whatever they're losing in taxes and sponsorships through the big markets there, and B, it's lifestyle. Toronto, New York, Miami, LA, Golden State, those all have a different nightlife and lifestyle than San Antonio, Texas.
Yep.
And those guys are young millionaires in their early 20s that are looking to have a good time.
As somebody who splits time between New York City and San Antonio, I can tell you it is night and day. And I enjoy the big city life. I love it. Even at my age, I still love the big city life. It is just incredible and it's amazing. And I get why these young kids want to live that life. And look, I think that's where the Spurs are likely going to have to try to acquire big talent by flipping these guys. Because if these big name guys are free agents, they'll consider San Antonio. They'll give them a talk. But ultimately, it's look how long it took for just LaMarcus Aldridge, the lone big name free agent, the only big name free agent to ever come to San Antonio. And how long have been this? And how long the Spurs have been in existence? I think 73. I think that's when they became an NBA franchise. Just one. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and actually, guys, I think that's a great point because and this is something I wanted to circle around. Something Jeff said about flipping a guy. I've been seeing a lot over the past couple of weeks or days that maybe Derek White should be this team's point guard. I mean, what's exactly the kind of the role of the point guards here moving forward? We know that both Derek and DeJounte are signed to at least like 3-4 year deals. So would DeJounte maybe be a guy who's on a good deal that the Spurs can flip in the future, bring back a top 15 type, top 20 sort of player? Because it seems kind of clear that they're not going to be able to do it through free agency. And unless Keldon kind of hits this extra level, or Derek White maybe even hits an all-star type level, I don't know if they're ever going to be back in that sort of in the top of the West without one of those top 15, 20 guys.
Right. And RJ, just to back you up here, how did they get those big name guys that brought them 5 titles? Draft. Hitting that lottery, hitting the number 1 draft pick, Tim Duncan, number 1 draft pick.
And you supplement the rest of your team and what it's missing. Like they've just right now got a whole bunch of guys that all do the same thing. They're mid-range slashers, get to the bucket. They don't have any floor spacers on this team. So in the offseason, you go after floor spacers that help complement what you already have on this team that opens up the offense. And maybe in that case, you don't need a superstar because much like the Utah Jazz, they've got probably one superstar in Donovan Mitchell and a bunch of really good guys that are all good at what they do. Rudy Gobert's a pick and roller that can defend the heck out of the paint. You've got that in Jakob Poeltl. Now you need to surround the guys that you have that do different things like slash and get to the bucket, let a DeMar walk, which opens up the possibility of bringing in a floor spacer, which allows Keldon to slash better and maybe get more involved now that DeMar's not commanding the volume of ball domination, along with the same 2 types of players also in the starting lineup with them, like Derek White and DeJounte Murray. Now maybe they work better together if there's only 2 ball dominants in the starting lineup instead of 3. The ball moves a little bit better, and all of a sudden the offense opens up more. So I think it's going to be very important, not the talent level of player, but more so the type of role that they fill in evening out what this team lacks.
And look what happened the last time they got bold for the Spurs standards. They traded away fan favorite George Hill to move up in the draft, or I'm sorry, just to get Kawhi Leonard. Look what it took for that to happen. And what did Kawhi happen? Continued that powerhouse vibe in San Antonio, got another title until all things kind of just fell apart. My point is that it took a bold move for the Spurs to maintain their dominance, if you will, their championship pedigree by making that move. And I think if that doesn't teach you what this team needs to do right now, then I don't know what will.
Well, and not only that, but what attracts all of these players, draft, lottery picks, anything to coming here, they always say, Coach Pop. I mean, it's not, San Antonio is a great city, like y'all were saying. San Antonio doesn't have that attractive ID that other big cities do. So what are they going to come here? Circling back around on Coach Pop. They're going to come here because they want to learn from him.
But how much
longer I think exactly.
Card, Chelsea?
You got that card, and plus 2, you still have something like do these big free agents want to come and work
and win? Yeah. Do they actually want to stay here? What's going to keep them here?
Yeah.
And how long can we actually play that card? Because we've been talking for the last couple seasons about how much longer is Pop going to play? And you got to wonder, any free agents you're bringing in, if Pop's the draw, they need to know that he's there for the life of whatever contract that they end up signing for.
And here's a couple of things. Historically, if that was really true about Pop being a draw, well, then when Pop had guys like the big 3, then how come we haven't got any more free agents? If Pop is such a big draw, and that was prime Pop, and with prime TD and Tony and Manu, I didn't see any free agents come because they said, I want to play with Pop. I didn't, even when they had the big 3, they still didn't come. And at that time, when LaMarcus Aldridge was a free agent, you have to look historically what happened at that time. The Lakers blew it in their pitch. At least that's the report. The Spurs were the more viable, the more attractive option because you still had Pop and you still had the big 3, something. And you had a guy named Kawhi Leonard. So, even when Pop was doing his thing and bringing titles and having all those guys, his name wasn't still enough to bring in big name free agents. The Spurs have always been used at that dare. Like, I dare you to not re-sign me or I'm going to go to San Antonio. It never happened. So I still don't think that even with Pop being the lone attractive person right now here in San Antonio is enough.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going ahead and bringing the show to an end because we had other topics slated out, but we are going long now. We're over an hour. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to play a quick video clip that my good friend Chris Duell had recorded for me earlier in the week. And it made me laugh when I saw it because I just love his infectious energy. So to end the show, I'm going to go ahead and play this quick video for us, and then we'll come back and end the show and go around the horn and let everybody know where they can follow you on social media. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play the video clip right now.
Hey, Chris Duell here with a shout out to Joe Garcia and the Two Shots Podcast. Actually, they're one and the same. Joe Garcia, Two Shots Podcast, Two Shots Podcast, Joe Garcia. Joe got me these cool Spurs glasses. 100th episode. Wow. Just a tremendous podcast, tremendous group of people that Joe brings together. Just great Spurs information, a great passion for the Spurs, great content. It's just fantastic. Congratulations, Joe. Congratulations, Two Shots Podcast. Congratulations, everybody who's ever been associated with the Two Shots Podcast. I'm a big fan, and so is Patty Mills. I'm sure Patty watches and listens all the time. Go Spurs, go! In Pop we trust. Cowboys.
That's Chris for you, man. I love Chris's energy, dude. He's always high energy. I just want to say thank you to Chris Duell. Thank you to everybody who supported Two Shots from the very beginning. Big shout out to everyone who's been here. Just like Jeff Garcia, I've had Benjamin here for quite some time. Wesley's been here. Pledger's been good enough to grace us with his presence. Same thing with RJ. I really appreciate every single one of you. You've impacted, the show in your own unique way. And it's just a privilege to be able to share the mic with all you guys and just talk sports and have fun with it. I'm a big fan of every single one of you guys. So couldn't be more thankful to be surrounded by great individuals who go ahead and help me become a better person. And not only that, but just, the broadcasting world thing that we're all living in together. It's great to have a good group of people behind you. So thank you guys so much, And with that said, let's go ahead and go around the horn here in closing. And where can they follow you on social media, Pledger?
Oh, me? I am Pledger on both Insta and Twitter. We're usually getting things ready for the show all the time. I produce The Blitz weekdays 4 to 7 with Jason Minix and Rob Thompson. And I have my own show, of course, the Saturday Morning Hangover, every Saturday morning from 9 to 11. So let's have fun.
There you go. So let's have fun, and make sure you do go follow Pledger and check out, the shows that he does produce and he's a part of. And of course, the Saturday Morning Hangover, which Jeff is also a frequent visitor there at that show as well.
Yeah, I get those texts from James at the last second. Yeah, the last second, or if I don't realize like he's texted me, I get these DMs. Have you checked your text? Did you check your oh, sorry, James. Yes, I'm
Which
joining
is
on. Yes,
funny
yes.
because you are more involved. Like, it's easier to get you through your DM than it is via text or phone call.
It is.
Exactly. Yeah, I think Joe and Pledger know exactly that. Yeah, that's probably the best way. But First of all, Joe, congratulations on 100. Here's to many more. Thank you for being, letting me be a part of your development, your growth. So here's to 100 more, and congratulations, Joe. For me, you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff G Spurs Zone, and make sure to subscribe to Locked On Spurs, where Pledger and Joe are frequent guests there. Anywhere you find your podcast, whether that be Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play. I feel like I'm doing my wrap up for Locked On Spurs right now. Yeah, exactly. And with that, I'd love to talk some Spurs. We got some good stuff going on at News for San Antonio at the Spurs Zone. Some good articles. If it's out there, I'll find it and I'll give it to you. Thanks, Joe, for having me on.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, Jeff, and thank you. RJ, where can they follow you on social media?
Well, before I get to that, I just want to say, Joe, again, thank you for having me on here. It's too bad we didn't get to our Marvel talk, man. I was going to say that this show has officially hit the
gone
age
off the wheels. It would
yeah,
have gone off the wheels.
This show has officially hit the age of Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers at this point. So no, I really appreciate you having me on anytime. You're awesome, dude. And so continued success with all this. So for anyone listening, if you just want to follow me, I'm pretty active on Twitter. It's at KSATRJ, KSATRJ, all one word. And, we just providing a lot of content, Spurs stuff on KSAT.com. I also do some live stuff for a lot of our morning shows. So if you happen to catch us live on KSAT 12 on our morning shows. I'm right there, and also on our website. So glad to be with everyone here. This is the first time we've all been able to, or at least that I've been able to interact with all you guys. So it's been a pleasure, and congrats again, Joe.
Thank you, RJ, so much. And Wesley, where can they follow you on social media?
Well, first of all, I have to give a shout out to Pledger's cat has stolen the show today.
Yeah, Tony Stark is going nuts today.
See, it was part of that thing, right? Bring back Tony Stark. There it is.
Yeah.
So at Wesley Perk, again, I just want to is where I'm at on Twitter, but I just want to echo the sentiment, Joe. One of the things I know he'll deflect, he's not about himself. He's very unselfish. And I think that just even giving myself, who literally, he took a chance on a guy who does band things for a living to come and talk sports with him on a regular basis. And I've always really appreciated that about Joe, that, he helps young podcasters out there to get their shows going and help them in any way possible. So the Two Shots podcast, I think, is more than just that show. It's a brand of Joe being able to go out in the community and help others. And, I just cannot say enough about that, and congrats. And here's to many, many more. And proud to always be able to talk sports with you.
No, thank you, my friend. Appreciate that. And Ben, where can they follow you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at _Boomstein, and of course, writing stuff for Project Spurs. And Joe, I just want to say you're a decent man in an indecent time, and I appreciate you for that.
So eloquently spoken, Ben.
Thank you. I steal many quotes. I have no shame.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. And Chelsea, where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, so Twitter is Chelsea Torres TV. I'm also very active on Instagram. Yes, I'm Chelsea. And, I'm not immersed in media as I was just a few months ago. And Joe, I'm really grateful for you to even invite me on these episodes. It's just really cool. And I love part of it. I love being able to talk to y'all and, just shoot the shit. Am I?
Yeah.
But, okay. 100 episodes. Congratulations. Here to Joe. Thank you.
Wow, Chelsea broke the curse word bubble right now. So they're just goes to show all of y'all.
She paused to be like, "Can I?" and then just does it anyway.
Yeah.
Getting the answer. She's
like, "I'm just gonna say what I want anyway." I like that, and you can curse on this show, by the way, if you want to. So if RJ wants to drop some F-bombs next time, hey, man, it's all game, dude.
I'm bringing it, dude, next time. It's about to get crazy up in here.
I was just waiting for that long pause of silence for somebody to just pop in like Will Ferrell in Old School and just rattle off a whole bunch of cuss words.
That should have been me. I should have done that, right, for the 100th episode. But, I appreciate everybody. Thank you again for coming on and doing the 100th episode of the Two Shots podcast. So we're going to go ahead and end the show on that note. And if you want to go ahead and follow me, look me up at Two Shots Podcast, all spelled out, TWO, Two Shots Podcast, most active on Twitter. So with that said, as we say every time when we end the show, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.